When people are grateful, there's a sense in which they realize they didn't get to where they are by themselves. When they're grateful, then normally they're able to extend grace and understanding to other people. When they're grateful, they also typically have an appreciation for where they are or what they're doing, and therefore they'll usually give great service or dedication. It's the people that are entitled that you've got to run from. Hello and welcome to Christ Church's Leadership Podcast. I'm Charles Kyker, your host, as we're speaking today, we've been in a series, if you want to call it that, or been looking at the Word and the whole theme of honor as we begin this year. It's remarkable as we've gone through the one-year Bible how this word keeps coming up here in the readings from the one-year Bible for this year. If you're not familiar with it, Christ Church follows a reading plan, a discipleship plan of reading through the one-year Bible. We have that online. You can go to christnc.com. You can go to YouTube and find it. We also have a chronological reading available now. If you'd rather follow that plan, maybe you've been in the one-year Bible reading for some time and you'd like a change, that's an opportunity for you as well. Honor, what does it mean? Well, we've talked about that a little bit in the beginning, but let's go over some working definitions of honor. High respect. High respect is one way to define it, as shown by special merit, recognition, or esteem. Great privilege. Great privilege. You might say, I had the honor of introducing the mayor of the city. That was a privilege. So that's what that was. Or a good name or reputation. You want to have honor. If somebody in the family messes up, there's some embarrassment that happens. Someone might say, you've dishonored our family. If somebody gets into trouble in a company or corporation, they may say you brought dishonor on the company. So it means a good name or reputation. Today, we're going to look at it in depth from our one-year Bible reading from Matthew chapter 20. There's two powerful things going on here. First, there is a command performance of honor. And you may not see it at first, but follow with me in the parable that Jesus told about the vineyard. Secondly, in the ensuing part of chapter 20, there is a request for honor. So let's go to Matthew chapter 20. We're looking at verse 1. And this is all in context of the kingdom of God. So for the kingdom of heaven, Jesus says, is like a landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. So whatever the daily wage would have been back then, today, whether it would be $10 or $15 or even $20 an hour, whatever the going wage was for that work, that's what he's going to pay them. And so they went to work in the vineyard at noon, and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again, and he saw some people standing around. He asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because no one's hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those who were hired first came to get their pay, they assumed that they would receive more. But they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. Those people worked only 1 hour, and yet you've paid them just as much as you paid us who worked all day in the scorching heat. He answered one of them, Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want to with my money? Should you be jealous because I'm kind to others? So those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first then will be last. And then skipping down to verse 20, we have a very proud parent here, very proud mother. And she wants her sons to have a place of honor. Then the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus with her sons. She knelt respectfully to ask a favor. What is your request? Jesus asked her. She replied, In your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit at places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left. But Jesus answered by saying to them, You don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering that I'm about to drink? Oh, yes, they replied, we are able. They obviously had no idea what Jesus was talking about. Jesus told them, You will indeed drink from my bitter cup, but I have no right to say who will sit on my right or my left. My Father's prepared those places for the ones that he has chosen. According to Isaiah chapter 40 and 1 Peter, we say the grass will one day wither, the flowers will one day fade away, but this word of the living God, it will stand forever. So here I want to just share three insights, leadership points, if you will, from this passage as we speak about honor. The first thing is there is a thin line. The first point would be this. There is a thin line between honoring the moment and the privilege and being privileged. There's a thin line between honoring the moment, the privilege, and then feeling privileged. The first time you get an honor, the first time you get a privilege of maybe doing something with someone calls you up more or less, someone raises you up, someone says, hey, I want you to help me with this. And you're like, wow, I've never done that before, never gotten that privilege before, never gotten that honor before. This was a real honor. This was great. Well, the next time the occasion occurs or the next time there's a need, you may think, well, certainly they'll call on me because last time I did a good job. Last time I cherished the moment, did my best. So I should be given that same privilege again. And then if you don't get that, you feel dishonored. But wait a minute. I thought you told the person who called you up. I thought you told others, oh, it was a real honor to speak last week. Oh, it was a real honor to be seen with so-and-so at the banquet and have the ability to say the prayer. It was a real honor that the board called me up and asked me to pray over everyone. There were so many distinguished people there. It was such an honor. But then 3 months later, when they have another celebration, certainly they'll choose me. Well, and then you don't get the invitation, then you feel dishonored. Well, wait a minute. I thought you said it was an honor to be called on. Well, it was an honor. Well, don't feel like then that you deserve it. It was an honor or it wasn't. So make up your mind. Which one is it? Was it an honor or are you entitled? It's a thin line. It is. It is for me. I'm confessing here. It's a thin line. When I get selected by John Maxwell's training to go certain places, and then other times I'm passed over, I'm like, what happened? Did Did the reviews come in bad on the last time? Was I not? No, they just thought about somebody who has family that lives in that particular country or whatever the case may be, and that's why they got selected. Didn't you say it was an honor that you got to go to Bangkok, Thailand? Didn't you say it was an honor that you got to go to Kenya and teach? Didn't you say it was an honor that you got to go to Monrovia, Liberia? Well, yeah, I did. Well, then it was an honor. You aren't entitled. But we were out here in the scorching heat all day long, and you paid this guy that came in at the last hour the same rate. What was Jesus' reply? Was I unjust? Didn't I pay you what I said I was going to pay you? Didn't I honor you by paying you what I told you? Well, yeah, but he only worked an hour. It's my money. Don't I have a right to do with it what I will? I think it's interesting. It's human nature, isn't it? They weren't just worried about getting their pay. They were looking around to see what everybody else got. That happened at Christmas at our house. I've got 11 grandchildren. I told them to slow down a couple years ago, and I think they have, because I think the youngest now is 5. But I gave them all some money, and I put it in envelopes, and I sealed the envelopes. And I was like, you open those when you get home. That was probably foolish on my part. So if you're 5 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to see what's inside the envelope. And so I had older ones and I had younger ones. Well, it was money that I gave them, right? I thought the younger ones might benefit by X amount, and then they could go buy a toy or something like that. Some of the older ones, maybe they needed like clothes, so they got a little bit more. But then whenever one of them found out what another one got, he was upset. And I said, "Sweetheart, did you get money?" "Well, yeah." "I didn't hear thank you. All I heard was, how come so-and-so got more than I did?" I thought about the parable of the vineyard. And I thought about this thing called human nature and this thing called sin. And that's why Jesus says these powerful words: whoever would be first will be last. Whoever is willing to be last will be first. The second point is gratitude is a necessary element in both showing honor and receiving honor, as gratitude is rooted in grace. Gratitude is a necessary element in both showing honor and receiving honor, as gratitude is rooted in grace. Several years ago, when he was willing to honor me, talk about honor, and allow me to be a student of his, because he was a very successful pastor way before they elected him bishop. In fact, I wonder sometimes if he would have done the kingdom more if he would have continued being a very successful pastor. Ernest Fitzgerald was one of the best preachers Western North Carolina had ever known. Part of that was because he was also an excellent pastor. He had a shepherd's heart. And he kept saying to me, never, ever, ever let go of any of these 3. Always work on preaching. Work hard to find the right words. It's the difference between thunder and lightning. Most pastors just thunder. You want some lightning. You want to hit the need. You want to hit where people are struggling. You want to speak to where people are living. Work hard to find the right word. Work hard on preaching. Second, work hard on pastoral care. If you can't be there, make sure someone else is in times of need for people. And thirdly, you've got to keep the order of the church. So work on administration. And again, if you can't do it, find somebody who can. But you've got to have things organized. and so it's important that the church function well for the kingdom of God. So those were his points to me, but then there was so much more that he shared. And then one day he just told me kind of an aside story that one of the wealthiest people in all of Greensboro, and really one of the wealthiest persons in North Carolina at the time. He owned multiple automobile dealerships. He had investments in Florida, Georgia, investments in North Carolina. He made money in the car business, but then he invested wisely in real estate, apartment complexes, so on and so forth. They were having a conversation when he was his pastor at a large church in Greensboro, and Ernest Fitzgerald had left the largest church in our conference at the time in Winston-Salem and went to Greensboro. But he was having this conversation with this businessman, and this businessman asked him, what do you look for? What do you think is absolutely essential in hiring an employee? What character do you look for? What do you look for in people when you hire people that you think will become excellent employees, workers, leaders, supervisors, managers? And this business person asked Reverend Fitzgerald this question. And he told his business friend, he said, if I truly had the answer to that, you probably couldn't have gotten in to see me today. There'd have been a line 2 miles long out the door. But he said, you've come with a sincere question, and I'll do my best to try to give you a sincere answer to the best of my ability. He said, I'm no expert on this, but I believe one of the most important things you need to look for in a person who you're either going to serve beside or someone you're going to employ or someone you want to have deep association with. And that's one word, and it's gratitude. When people are grateful, there's a humility about them. When people are grateful, there's a sense in which they realize they didn't get to where they are by themselves. When they're grateful, then normally they're able to extend grace and understanding to other people. When they're grateful, they also typically have an appreciation for where they are or what they're doing, and therefore they'll usually give great service or dedication. It's the people that are entitled that you've got to run from. The people that think you owe them something all the time. It's hard for them to extend grace because they're entitled. It's hard for them to see another person be promoted because they feel entitled. But if people are grateful, they'll celebrate when somebody else gets promoted because they're grateful for what they have. The third point is the parable is not about justice or rewards, of course. It's solely about grace. The mother's request is solely about privilege instead of honoring the king of the kingdom. Jesus, when you get to your kingdom, when you get to your place of honor, I want you to honor my sons. I want one at your right and one at your left. You see, here's the rub. You and I, we know we need God's grace. Most of us are smart enough, hopefully, to know that and know that we have limitations, we have sin. We know we need grace. However, it's hard to practice grace-filled living. When we do practice grace-filled living, we truly honor God and we open ourselves up to being honored by God and really being honored by other people. So when I practice grace-filled living, I give God an opportunity to honor me. When I practice entitlement and that I should be privileged and I deserve this spot, sometimes God is more graceful than I deserve when I have that kind of attitude. But rarely have I seen people be honored when they are dishonoring of God, dishonoring of the kingdom. And I use the word dishonor sparingly, but I use it honestly because I believe when we demand things of God, when we feel highly privileged and highly entitled, I think, beyond a shadow of a doubt, when I do that, I'm dishonoring God's grace. Because the reality of it is this: I do not deserve what God has made possible for me. I do not deserve to be forgiven. I do not deserve to receive the grace that is given upon Calvary for my sins. It's unconditional love. It's undeserved pardon. When I claim that and own that, I'll become a different person. And so I want to say thank you for joining us today, and may God give you honor, even if you've only worked 1 hour for that day. And if He does, be thankful, be grateful, and give Him praise. Thank you again for being with us.